A reading from the Gospel according to John. Now before the festival of Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water in a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around his waist. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who is bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet and put on his robe and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." When he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little while longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should also love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Here ends the reading. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Monday night of last week, I was in a meeting with a number of the members of our congregation. It's really the COVID-19 task force that we've put together, and it was the fourth time that we had met. And over the course of our gatherings, we have had to make a number of decisions about how we move forward as a church, how we keep connected with each other, how we keep worship going, how we support people who are in their homes and running out of supplies, how we might support people who are in their homes and sick, how we support people who are grieving, who have maybe lost a loved one, who have maybe lost their livelihood. Lots of different situations and scenarios that we have been kicking around, and we have been putting together teams to respond to what we anticipate coming. We've also moved mountains in terms of technology, creating a platform for a virtual church, not just an online YouTube video platform, but also getting Zoom out so that we can worship together, so that we can meet together, so that we can have conversation and share more deeply together. That work of setting up the platforms is pretty much done. There is some fine-tune work to be done, but we're not quite yet to the next wave of activity when the illness is going to begin to overwhelm our community. And in between this wave of activity, Brenda Callia asked a very important question. She asked, "James, what happens if you get sick? What's the succession plan?" And I have to admit, I have thought about that a lot. I've had conversations with the staff. We have put together documents that are shared so that if one person cannot come into the office anymore or is no longer functional, Other members of staff can pick it up. I've had conversations with Jane about her wellness program, knowing that with my risk factors, I'm likely to get sick and be out for a couple of weeks, and that she needs to be able to pick up the slack and continue to move as the head of staff and lead the church in its response to what is happening around us. But I have to admit that the question that Brenda asked so directly really stopped my heart. It is hard to think of yourself in objective terms and talk about yourself being taken out of the equation dispassionately. And I think that experience gave me a little bit more insight into what is going on in our reading tonight, set in the upper room with Jesus and the disciples. Jesus in the Gospel of John is a huge personality. I mean, he is never bested. He's always in control of the situation. It doesn't matter if it's a woman at a well in Samaria or if it's Nicodemus, one of the members of the ruling council in Jerusalem. He is always in control. Even at his trial before Pilate, the others seem to act as sort of supporting actors. Jesus stands solid in the center, unmoved by what is going on. Even at the crucifixion, he allows it to happen as though he is allowing something to be completed. Something greater is going on than those people who have the power of life and death over him. And so as they come to this scene in the upper room, there is a very obvious sense that a confrontation is coming to a head. And because Jesus has never lost an encounter or a confrontation with people, I'm sure that the disciples are expecting that Jesus will triumph with this confrontation that is coming with the religious ruling elite, with the ruling council. And maybe they're anticipating what their role is when Jesus takes charge. And so the question that's on their minds, but that isn't asked openly, is the same. What is the succession plan? If Jesus takes over, who becomes second in command? If, God forbid, Jesus is taken out of the equation, who rises to leadership? And so Jesus rises and he takes off his outer robe, the symbol of who he is, the symbol of his authority. And you can hear the collective gasp in the room as various disciples are wondering, is it going to be me? Is he going to put the mantle on my shoulders? Am I going to be the one? And after all, we know throughout the Gospels, all the Gospels, we run into instances of disciples asking Jesus for preference over the others. Who will be the one? Only Jesus does not put his robe on the shoulders of someone else. He lays it aside, picks up a towel, wraps it around his waist, and then he takes his robe and puts it back on again and gets down on all fours, on his hands and knees, and begins to wash the feet of the disciples. It's too much for Peter. What king has ever kneeled except in defeat? What is this, that the Lord of Lords is walking around on the floor with a basin of water and a towel, cleaning dirty, dungy feet? Towels are used to clean up messes, to wipe babies at both ends, to bind wounds, to wipe tables. This is not the job of a king, and the towel is not the symbol of authority. But Jesus has a point too. Leadership is exercised in service. And that service is framed by love. It is interesting as you look at this chapter and at this scene. John begins the text by showing that Jesus brought his disciples together out of love. And Jesus commands them at the end, when all is said and done, to love one another. And it is in showing their love for one another that they, the disciples, will show the rest of the world that they are the followers of Jesus. What is our succession plan as a congregation in these times? Maybe it's to take a cue from Jesus, to take off our outer robe of prestige and power and resources, tie a towel around our waist, and get down on our hands and knees and work to help clean up the messes that are around us. Yes, our service is to people who need it, to people who have fewer resources, to people who are locked in their houses, to people who are ill, for people who are grieving. And our leadership is shown in our service to them. And our service is born out of the compassion and love that we have, because God is compassionate and loves us. What is our succession plan? It is simple. We continue to serve, and in serving, show God's love and God's healing.